On May 25, 2011, a platoon of American scouts, Afghan soldiers, and air controllers wound through the rocky terrain of Doab, a remote corner of Nuristan Province. The mountains pressed close, sharp ridges rising like stone walls. The patrol was tense but routine until it wasn't. Then, the world cracked open. Machine gun fire erupted from the ridgelines. Mortars slammed into the earth, sending shockwaves through the canyon. Bullets hissed from above, sparking off rock, cutting through brush. Contact! The call ripped through radios. The patrol was trapped. From every direction, hundreds of Taliban fighters surged down the slopes. They had the high ground, the numbers, and the advantage. The coalition force was small, just a handful of Americans and Afghan allies. Surrounded, outnumbered, outgunned. For the men on the ground, survival seemed impossible. Yet what followed was one of the most extraordinary displays of modern firepower and battlefield grit in the Afghanistan War. This is the story of Doab's Defiant stand. Nuristan Province, a name synonymous with danger. Rugged, remote, and fiercely independent, the people of Nuristan had resisted outside rule for centuries. The Soviets bled here in the 1980s. The Americans now faced the same unforgiving ground. By 2011, the Taliban had made Nuristan a fortress. Remote valleys became sanctuaries for insurgents, training camps, supply caches, staging grounds for attacks. For coalition forces, denying them these havens was critical. The area around Doab was especially volatile. Intelligence suggested large Taliban concentrations moving through the valley. Commanders feared that insurgent networks were consolidating, preparing for larger offensives. To counter this, a small coalition element, American scouts from the 133rd Infantry Regiment, partnered with Afghan National Army soldiers and forward air controllers, was tasked with probing the valley, disrupting Taliban activity, and showing presence. It was dangerous work. The Taliban knew the terrain intimately. They had local support, and they had been waiting. The patrol moved into the valley under a clear sky. The terrain was deceptive, rocky outcroppings, narrow trails, blind corners. Afghan soldiers led the way, with American scouts interspersed. Radios crackled with updates. Then, at approximately 10 a.m., the silence shattered. From the ridgelines above, the Taliban struck with overwhelming force. Hundreds of fighters, armed with machine guns, RPGs, and mortars, opened fire simultaneously. The coalition patrol was caught in a textbook complex ambush. Fire from multiple directions. Coordinated volleys of RPGs to pin movement. Mortars and heavy weapons targeting escape routes. Pinned against the rocks, the soldiers scrambled for cover. Dust and shrapnel filled the air. Afghan troops shouted orders, returning fire with bursts from their rifles. The Americans responded with discipline, short, controlled bursts, while scanning for targets. But the numbers were staggering. Estimates would later put Taliban strength at 300 to 400 fighters. The coalition patrol? Fewer than 50, including Afghan allies. They were outnumbered nearly 10 to 1. The key to survival lay in a single fact: the coalition had air controllers embedded with the patrol. Even as rounds cracked overhead, U.S. soldiers called in coordinates. Minutes later, the sky roared. F-16 fighter jets screamed overhead, dropping precision bombs on Taliban positions. Explosions shook the ridges, sending dust clouds rolling through the valley. Yet the insurgents kept pressing, maneuvering through rocks and trees. Next came the AC-130 gunships. Circling above, their cannons lit up the night sky, spewing streams of fire into enemy formations. Taliban squads were torn apart under withering barrages. Still they advanced. The Taliban believed they had numbers on their side. They kept trying to press closer, to overwhelm by sheer mass. But the coalition responded with storm. Apache helicopters swooped low, unleashing rockets and chain gun bursts. Each pass shredded fighters on the slopes. Afghan soldiers on the ground fought fiercely. Side by side with Americans, they fired until barrels smoked. Hours stretched on. The Taliban attack, massive, coordinated, relentless, was met with an iron wall of discipline and devastating air power. By afternoon, the battlefield was littered with spent shells, smoke, and silence. The coalition force, battered but unbroken, still stood. When the smoke cleared, the scale of the battle was revealed. The coalition patrol, small, outnumbered, surrounded, had held its ground. Against all odds, not a single coalition soldier was killed. The Taliban, however, had suffered catastrophic losses. Estimates put their casualties at 270 killed and many more wounded. Entire enemy formations had been wiped out in the valley of Duab. It was one of the most lopsided battles of the war in Afghanistan. For the Americans and Afghan allies who survived, the memory remained vivid. Hours of fear, exhaustion, and the constant knowledge that death was seconds away. Radios crackling, jets screaming, the ground shaking beneath them. Their survival owed much to discipline, training, and air power, but also to the simple fact that none of them gave in. Each man, Afghan and American alike, held the line. The Battle of Duab became a reminder of two truths. First, that in Afghanistan, no patrol was routine. The enemy could outnumber you 10 to 1, and the terrain itself could become your enemy. Second, that with discipline, courage, and overwhelming air power, even the smallest force could defy impossible odds. The men of Duab walked into a trap designed to destroy them.